Hey guys, Michael here for another episode of GI TV. I'm here with Carl from the marketing department, and we got a few questions about the DT4 from our Facebook and YouTube pages, so we're just going to read off of those. I don't know if you want to start off. How are we going to do this?
Yeah, sure. So over the past week, since we released the original DT4 video, we've kind of been taking your questions via Facebook and Instagram and YouTube. So we've got a list of probably the 10 questions that popped up the most that we're going to tackle. So we do apologize if we mispronounce any of these names, so just bear with us. This first question is from Gerard Comstock on Facebook, and he asks, what kind of functions are there on the DT4? And in parentheses, he says burst, full auto, semi-auto, and what difference does this make on the FPS of the gun, if any? So all of the standard features found on a Classic Army ECS rifle are all present here. So Classic Army's MOSFET adds extra protection for your trigger switch, and it allows you to program the gun to fire in either 3 or 5 round burst modes, but given the fact that there are 2 barrels, it's going to be a 6 and a 10 round burst technically, because the barrels are firing in tandem. This has no effect on the rifle's FPS, just due to the mech box design.
Overall, I found that, even though you do have that adjustable trigger system onto this, I didn't really see a lack of performance when you're using only one magazine. We took it out with us to Desert Fox this past weekend, let people shoot it. We only did one mag at a time on a few of them, and there was no deviance or variation or loss of performance just from doing one barrel at a time. So even if you only have one mag in it, it's still gonna run just fine. So the next question we got is from Marba Aleva. Apologize again if we ruined your name. Does one gearbox handle both barrels? Yes, it does. It's a single gearbox. We can't go too much into detail about the exact specifics of the gun. That's going to be released by Classic Army later on at SHOT Show next week. But it's a single motor, single gearbox, and it powers the entire gun. They designed it very well, and I believe it is going to be pretty sturdy along in the future.
So Marba also asks if there's any kind of, quote, monster internal nightmare that we might be dealing with if that's the case, and that being one gearbox handling both barrels. And realistically, that shouldn't be the issue. The design is essentially 2 cylinders that have one kind of large piston housing that has 2 pistons within it, but it's all connected to one single rack of teeth that interface with the gears. So outside of those compression elements, it's basically a normal AEG inside of here. So there shouldn't be any kind of unforeseen problems. Like it's pretty simple, realistically. We don't really foresee any issues stemming from the design itself cropping up. All right, and Bowdy Miller / Mohawk Tactical, either a team or an Airsoft code name,
or company,
asks on Facebook, does this have an integrated MOSFET? And if so, what batteries can I run with this when I get it? It does. As we just mentioned, the DT4 has Classic Army's signature ECS MOSFET system in it, and we would recommend an 11.1, just as, honestly, who isn't using an 11.1 at this point? But for trigger response, the snappiness, everything that you want out of a battery, just go with a normal 11.1. Should be do you good.
Yeah, when we were test firing this at Desert Fox, I know I'm mentioning that a lot, but we were using some Team Turnigy 11.1 volt LiPo batteries, and the gun is already pre-wired to DINs out of the box. And I prefer that on all my guns. That's literally the first thing I do to any gun I buy is immediately rewire to DINs, just because you do get a superior trigger response and better overall connection with it. And the fact that Classic Army includes these to be wired to DINs, not just the DT4, but every single gun that they sell is pre-wired to DINs out of the box with the Tamiya adapter. So me personally, I just throw away the Tamiya adapter because all my batteries are wired to DINs already. But that's a great feature that I'm really glad that Classic Army includes out of the box. So our next question is from Zach Hardesty. I do apologize again, from Freedom Stuff, I guess.
Yeah.
What exactly what parts in this thing are proprietary to, and how upgradable will it be? Example: barrel, bucking, compression components, etc., etc. As far as barrel bucking and hop-up unit goes, it's all a standard version 2. Let me go ahead and lock this back here for you guys. But as you guys can see, it has a new polymer style hop-up unit, the blue one. You can use any standard hop-up unit, barrel, bucking, nub, and it's all gonna drop right in with no problem. And then as far as compression parts go, it is a little proprietary with the dual cylinder system, so you may be limited on what you can do there.
Right, the cylinders and the pistons are going to be the main proprietary elements. that we've encountered. We actually, I mean, this thing has to go to shot, so we can't break it open and try to upgrade it and all that. But from what we can tell just visually, everything else outside of that should be V2 compatible. Now, like I said, we haven't tested it, so take that with a grain of salt. There's always that airsoft element of things being a little out of spec. From what we can tell, should be V2 compatible. Now that's going to be, like Mike said, barrels, hop up bucking, even the motor and gears should be normal V2 M4 stuff. All right, and Liam Kennedy on Facebook asks, what's the gear setup in it? Some sort of 4-gear monstrosity like in an SVD? No, like we just said, the DT4 has normal M4 style gears, so standard bevel, spur, and sector gear. Just like any other normal Airsoft M4, it's how and where the gears connect to that double piston system that has a single rack of gears that makes the gunfire in tandem.
I don't see any situations where why you may not be able to change out the gear set. So you can drop in all your favorite upgrade parts like Siege Tech, SHS, Lone X, some G&G stuff. It really depends on what parts you want to put into it. From what we can see, there's nothing really proprietary about the gear set itself.
This is actually a good place to mention while we're talking about motors and gears that this does come with Classic Army's 31K motor, which is a relatively recent addition to their Nemesis AEG line. But this thing is super torquey, and it kind of has to be in order to power the whole compression system that we're talking about here. So even though you're pumping out that volume of fire, trigger response is still super snappy.
Yeah, still very snappy, and I completely agree with that. Our next question is from Facebook as well. Joey Hekdusik. I'm so sorry.
Joey
H. I'm just gonna apologize. I'm so sorry. FPS question mark, and what is the true function of the gun? Can it be upgraded to HPA? FPS wise, I didn't chrono it. I don't know if you have.
Yeah, we did. It's actually right around 350 or so.
Okay. I wouldn't expect it to be too high of an FPS, being that you have to pull back 2 springs. You don't want it too powerful. But I don't know what you mean by true function of the gun. If by true function you mean does it operate individually on each barrel, and yeah, it would. You can have one magazine in at a time, and the gun will still function just fine without the other magazine. And then can it be upgraded to HPA? That's a good question. I mean, you would obviously have to go with like the Jack, the F1, Wolverine, something where it uses the cylinder set and the existing gearbox, but you have to find a way to sync them both up to the trigger at the same time, and then route the HPA line into one single hose to run to your tank. But you're a former tech. You know a little bit more than I do on the HPA.
Yeah. So just going back to what is the true function, maybe I read that a little bit too literally. I was thinking more like, how would this be used in a game, or why does this exist? And I think you can kind of get an idea. So this actually is based on a real firearm, which is another question we keep getting. The Israeli Gilboa snake is actually the closest analogous rifle to this thing in real life, and it was essentially conceived of as a way to break ambushes. So if you walk into a situation where unfortunately you stumble into an ambush, you've got like a set amount of time to break the ambush and make people double think about engaging you, and that's why that rifle exists. You just want to put down as much voluminous fire as possible. Honestly, this would be great at doing that as well if you're kind of like a more Milsim type, or for faster games, speed soft games. It's still putting out a ton of fire with a relatively low like cyclic rate, but because you have 2 barrels, it's essentially doubled. Now, as far as HPA tapping it or putting some sort of HPA engine, so far as I'm aware of, that's not currently possible just because of the compression system. I don't know that there would be a way to power both of those barrels and have it connect to the hop-up unit with any current HPA engine that's out there. However, wink, wink, if Polar Star or Wolverine or whomever want to put a fusion engine out there that works with this, just saying, there's a lot of people asking for it. All right, so YouTube user LithiumX asks, will this be, I suppose that should be, will this be available in limited quantities, and when do you think pre-orders will start? We're not exactly sure how large the initial run of the DT4s is going to be at the moment. As with anything Airsoft, it's always, like, if you're planning on getting it, you may as well throw down a pre-order just to be safe. Pre-orders are actually live on the website right now, and they've got a tentative release date, or when we expect them to be in the US, available to ship out by mid-May. As with anything, that's always subject to change. But we'll go ahead and drop a link in the description below for the DT4 pre-orders.
I really do hope it gets here in May. That'd be a good birthday present to myself.
Yeah, right?
The next question, guys, is from a YouTube user by the name of Will1995. Are all magazines compatible? Are any of the gearbox parts proprietary? What's the price supposed to be? And does it come with a MOSFET, and is it programmable? As far as magazine compatibility goes, same compatibility as any other Classic Army, as long as it isn't too fat, because you do have two mag wells to have two right next to each other. So when we first got this in, I did try some magazines in it. The Classic Army VMS mags fit just fine. The PTS EPMs that Greg Wong brought along, the base plates didn't really interfere with each other, and it fed just fine. Obviously, if you have standard Stanags, they're not going to get in the way. But a lot of questions, or one of the biggest questions I've been getting, are the EchoMore Fat Mags going to fit? And those are the kind of the 60-round Surefire magazine design. And being that they're so fat, they may not work very well.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that we've showed the actual mag wells themselves, but if you look, it's not a whole lot of room there. So something like the Surefire mags or anything that's larger than a normal M4 Stanag mag is probably not going to work in tandem, but again, not something that we have had the opportunity to test out.
Yeah.
As far as the price point, it's sitting right at $389.99, which is obviously going to be competitive with like most other high-end M4s that are currently on the market, which, considering the amount of the volume of fire that you would be putting out with this thing is pretty impressive, because it's pretty close to essentially like an M249 almost. And it's not $500, $600, $700, so pretty dope.
Yeah, definitely. First time I saw this, I definitely expected the price point to be way up there, but then when I was told, it's like, oh, it's only like $380, $390, it's like, oh, holy crap, I might actually have to pick one.
Right. Alrighty, so Julian Pardo, also on YouTube, asks, will there be any box-type magazines available for this? And honestly, this is probably the question that we've got the most. Right now, it's a solid maybe. Given the proximity of the mag wells that we just talked about to one another, the mags would need to kind of come down and spiral off to either side, which then gives you a kind of wonky problem from a manufacturer's standpoint of like, well, now we need technically a left and a right box magazine. Which just doesn't seem super practical to sell in like a set. Be a little bit silly.
Return to the snail drum mag.
Yeah, exactly. Kind of like an MP18, like the World War II subgun, World War I, excuse me.
Or even the Luger with the snail drum mag.
Right. The alternative would technically be like a normal C-mag that comes off to either side, but with two magazine-like attachments for it, which, again, that might be a little bit strange just from an engineering standpoint, but honestly, if you guys really want a drum mag for this thing, like Classic Army is in a period where they're very receptive to what customers actually want. So if you want it, honestly, just keep howling for it. There's a good chance that something like that might come out in the future.
Yep, definitely. Another question from a YouTube user by the name of Michael Bamas. What's the weight and length on it? It's really not that heavy. It's only weighing about 7-8 pounds at most. Barrel-wise, this looks like a standard 14-inch barrel, like any other carbine length. This is subject to change. It's a 10-inch M-LOK rail on it, but standard M-LOK fits any M-LOK accessories. We had Greg Wong put on one of the Fortis M-LOK shifts. We didn't get that on camera, but standard M-LOK, nothing too crazy about it, and nothing really out of the ordinary on it.
Yeah, it is slightly heftier than a normal M4, but it's definitely well below the weight of things that generally fall into the light machine gun class of airsoft guns. Definitely well below an M249, and probably a little bit lighter than like a stoner like M63. Yeah. So like I mentioned earlier, for the volume of fire that this thing is putting out, it feels not too different from a normal M4.
Yeah, definitely. And then it's definitely lighter than most DMRs, like the M110s, SR25s of the world. It's definitely lighter than that. Definitely lighter than most AKs, being that AKs, are steel and wood. But, I can't really complain about the weight. It is a little wide up front, but if you have bigger hands, it's not going to be a problem at all.
Or honestly, if you throw a hand stop, an M-LOK hand stop on it, it's not going to feel any different, really.
Yeah, definitely.
All right, Chris Anderson, back on Facebook, asks, one question, why do people like stupid guns? Why do people like Nickelback or Imagine Dragons? Do you like Imagine Dragons, Christopher?
What's wrong with Imagine Dragons?
They're terrible, and if you like them, you should feel bad. Not for real, though. In all seriousness, I don't honestly, like I'm kind of a more milsim oriented player, and when I first saw this thing, I was like, ugh, like what?
Same.
But I've kind of come around on it. Even if it's not anything that I would personally use for the type of games that I play, I don't think it's stupid at all. And once I actually got to get my hands on it, it's really cool and interesting from a mechanical and a technical perspective. And if there's kind of anything that the industry needs in general, I mean, how often do people say, oh, it's another M4, like look at this company, it's another M4. Everyone puts out M4s because they sell, right? But this is honestly like a pretty cool piece of innovation. After shot, when the internals are allowed to be released, which are patent pending, TM, do not steal. So for me personally, I just think that it's cool to see a gun that is this unique, but also has the internal performance to kind of back that uniqueness up. I feel like really often when you have unique pieces like these, they sort of sacrifice the function for the form. And while it is really cool to go out there with, you know, a one-of-a-kind airsoft gun or something that's going to turn heads, if you can't then shoot those heads, then, you know, what's the point?
As far as innovation goes, in my opinion, the last great company to do that was Tokyo Marui with the recoil shock system. They weren't the first ones to do the recoil system, but I feel they were the best ones to do it. You get great performance and you still get some kind of recoil with it, and that's just something that isn't common really with the recoil guns in my opinion. I feel like they're probably the best ones you can get, but again, they're not readily available because of the trademark infringement. But as far as Classic Army goes with innovation, they really hit it on the nail. From what we've seen so far, it shoots great, it's snappy, and it has a very healthy rate of fire for what it actually is, and I'm really excited to see what the final production model will be on this one.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, for me personally, like I've been playing this sport for longer than I care to mention on the internet. But it is really cool to go to see Classic Army like really step up, and it looks like they're making some serious effort to pump new life back into the brand. They've been around for a really long time, and it's kind of cool to just see them within the past year like come surging back to the forefront of something as innovative as this. So that's going to wrap it up. Honestly, I don't know that there are any other questions that we can answer. We kind of went over the broadest and most commonly asked, but if you guys got any more, pop them in the comment section below. Additionally, check out our community tab on YouTube. We are making an effort to be a lot more active there. If you guys want to throw in any suggestions, criticisms, whatever, please be nice. Head over there, and don't forget to like, share, subscribe.
Do all those things. Hit the bell icon so you know whenever we upload stuff too.
Yep.
All right. I've been Michael.
I'm Carl.
And this has been GI TV.
Later.